This is Renee Brewer. I'm back again for week 3 of the Laura's Lean Cooking for Two campaign for this month of February. Again, coming to you from downtown Lexington from my shop, Wine+Market. And so this week we're going to discuss a couple wine pairings for the Italian wedding soup for two. And I decided that we were going to focus on a couple of blends. So as have been all of the other recipes that we've done with Laura's Lean, a lot of really delicious, complex elements to this dish. So you have the savory herbs in the dish and the silky texture of the broth, and then of course the texture and the weight of the Laura's Lean 92% ground beef meatballs. So again, I thought it would be fun to focus on blends this week. So I picked a white blend and a couple red blends. And so when I talk about blends, blended wines are blends of 2 or more grape varieties. When we've talked about some of the other wines in the past couple weeks, we've had a lot of single grape varietal wines. For example, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. But a lot of times winemakers, when they want to make a little bit more of a complex wine, they will blend grapes together. And we see all sorts of different kinds of blends depending on where in the world the wine is produced. For example, in Europe, winemakers will focus on blends from grapes that they've traditionally blended for several generations, and sometimes in other parts of the world you might see blends that are just new blends where the winemaker is creative and making his style of wine. But as an example, we'll take a couple of different grape varieties. If you've ever had Merlot, a single varietal Merlot or a single varietal Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot wines typically tend to be really soft in their texture, really plush and fruity flavors of chocolate and raspberry, whereas Cabernet Sauvignon wines, generally speaking, tend to be sturdier, drier, more astringent and bitter wines, oftentimes notes of blackberry or black currant and cedar. So you have the different aromas and the flavor profile and texture of these two wines. But if the winemaker blends those two wines together, then all of a sudden you have this wine that's got, again, generally speaking, just that much more complexity of the different flavors combined and the different textures combined. So because of the complexity of the soup and the light brothy element and the heavier texture of the meatballs, I wanted to pick a couple wines that were complex as well. So for a white wine, I would recommend pairing a blend from grapes that are historically grown in the south of France. This, however, is a wine from Australia. So a lot of winemakers globally, they will reference back to traditional styles of winemaking in Europe. And this is one of those traditional blends. This is a blend of 2 different grapes, Viognier and Marsanne. And again, these are 2 grapes that you typically see growing in the south of France. So if you've ever had a white wine from the Côte du Rhône region of France, you've probably had some sort of similar version of this blend. So white wines, they're often called Rhône blends, whether it's a red wine or a white wine. So this particular Rhône style blend, it's a medium bodied wine, which I picked because it is chicken broth after all. So it is light, but you've got this really nice kind of savory flavor of the chicken broth and the herbs. And so you'd want a wine that isn't too light in texture or too fruity, yet it is heavy enough that the beef won't overpower the flavor and the texture of the wine. And in case any of you guys have any questions on what does a light-bodied wine mean versus a medium-bodied or full-bodied wine, an analogy I like to give is to think about milk. Think about your fat-free milk that you would purchase in the grocery store versus whole milk. The texture of the milk is going to be different on your palate when you drink it. The fat-free milk is going to be a lot lighter in style, and the whole milk is going to coat your mouth and be heavier in texture. So similar concept with wine tasting. A lighter bodied wine is going to be really light and kind of bright and crisp on your palate, not leave too much of a residual feeling on your palate. Whereas a fuller bodied wine, you're going to feel that weight. more than you will on the weight of the light-bodied wine. Of course, medium-bodied is in between a light-bodied wine and a full-bodied wine. And so there are different degrees in between light to medium to full. And again, this wine right here from a really wonderful estate that I enjoy very much in Australia called Darrenberg. This is more on the medium-bodied side. So this is a great, I think, a good recommendation. Also, again, any white wine from the south of France would probably be a nice pairing. As far as a couple of red blends, one of the blends I wanted to feature is a blend from Tuscany. So wines from the region of Tuscany, these come from vineyards that are planted close to the city of Florence. And a lot of times, blends from Tuscany are blends of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah, Sangiovese, amongst a few other different grapes, but those typically tend to be the most important grapes. So I did mention this Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot blended in here, so you're going to have the complexity of texture and flavor from those grapes. Yet the Merlot is a little bit of a softer, oftentimes more medium-bodied wine, as is Sangiovese. Sangiovese adds kind of this nice sort of mouth-watering acidity to the wine. And because there's Merlot and Sangiovese in here to kind of temper the fuller-bodied effects of the Cabernet Sauvignon, I thought that this might be a good pairing with the soup because it is mouth-watering. It's got some fruity flavors and slightly earthy tones as well to pair with the meatballs and the light texture of the soup. So if you wanted to maybe head back to the traditional French blend, I did choose a bottle of a Côte de Rhône. So the Rhône region of France, it's in the southern part of the kind of the Mediterranean climate of France, and there are different degrees of body in the Rhône wines, from medium body to fuller body. This is a little more on the medium bodied side. Some of the wines do typically tend to be a little on the fuller bodied side, so you might just want to ask your the wine professional in your area what their opinion is. So I think what I would like to do, I would like to go ahead and open up a bottle. Before I do that, actually, I did want to make one final comment as we're wrapping up the Cooking for Two campaign with Laura's Lean. These are just suggested pairings, and if there are wines that you just really don't like, we are, I think, in this for the pleasure of dining, of eating good food that we like, and drinking good wine that we like. So if there really is a style of wine that you really don't like that maybe I've suggested the past 3 pairings, by all means, drink what you do like. These are just suggested pairings, and this is part of the fun of being in the wine world. There are so many different types of wine that are produced globally that we really just have the world at our fingertips. And if there's just a style of wine you don't like, there's always another style of wine to choose. So I think we're just going to go ahead and open up this bottle of, we're going to do the Italian wine instead, since that was this is going to be, I think, a delicious pairing with the Italian wedding soup. Again, this is going to be a medium-bodied wine. A lot of different flavors here from all the variety of grapes that are in this wine. The Cabernet Sauvignon, the Merlot, the Syrah, the Sangiovese. This wine, although this was made in Italy, this is a variety of grapes that you find growing in both France and Italy. It's very common in the region of Tuscany to see these blends that aren't just Italian wines. So this is just going to be a nice, full-flavored, complex yet medium-bodied wine. It's not too intensely dark in color. If this was 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, chances are this wine would be just a much darker wine that you would have a harder time seeing through. But this is, I don't know if you can see on the video, but a little bit lighter in color, and that is in part because of the Merlot and the Sangiovese that are in the mix too. So I do appreciate your attention over the past 3 weeks. It's been a pleasure sharing my wine advice with you. So happy cooking, and cheers to all of your cooking endeavors.